So I found this video that Zebel put out, I think today, and she's asking the question, can you solo FF14? And to answer that question before we hear what she has to say, I believe that you can solo FF14. I think the way the game is set up now with the trust system, as well as the I forget the other version of it that they're calling it, but you have the trust system, you have the other system for lower end content. So literally for like Satasha, the first dungeons in the game up to like the rest of the dungeons, they have actually, you can now do them with trusts essentially. And you also have the if you want to do like recruitments, if you're leveling up your grand company, sorry, not your grand company, but your individual company, I forget what they're called, but you can level up your main company, and you have like different, you can recruit people for your little team, for your little army essentially. You have new recruits, and you can basically run dungeons with those recruits. You can basically level like all dungeons with that grand company system, in which you will get the benefits of not only being able to start a free company, but you can also level up, get experience, and do dungeon solo. So there are benefits. There's a lot of automated AI stuff that they have implemented in the game. And I think you can essentially, well, okay. Actually, you can't solo Final Fantasy XIV. You can't. Reason being is that those trust systems only apply to dungeons. There are a number of trials. Trials are required content usually. They're weaved into the MSQ, and those are usually required to clear. So you will always have to play with people at some point. But when it comes to main scenario quests, for the most part, you can solo FF14 by yourself. But you will have to play with people regardless. Regardless, you will have to pair up with people. So I think the answer is yes and no. But let's see what Zebla has to say.
Answer a question you might have asked yourself if you've ever been healed by me in the Duty Finder. Is Final Fantasy XIV soloable? Can you avoid other players in this massively multiplayer online game? And the answer to that is, well, yes, kind of, but actually, no. There's plenty of stuff that you can do solo in Final Fantasy XIV now, and Yoshi P, director-producer of the game, said that one of his main goals for the future of 14 is to make the entire story experience fully soloable. He said that he's tired of hearing people say, yeah, I've played every Final Fantasy game except for the MMOs. Like, actually, I think if you say that in a mirror 3 times, a Final Fantasy XIV player will appear and tell you to download the free trial. But then they vanish before telling you how to actually buy or download the game. Of course, yeah, mainline Final Fantasy titles are traditionally solo games. And while some people come to Final Fantasy XIV because they heard it's a really good MMO, like I did, there's other people that come to Final Fantasy XIV because they heard it's a really...
You turned them against me. You have done that yourself. That's great. That's a great meme. That's a great Star Wars meme right there. I like it.
Really good MMO, like I did. There's other people that came or would consider it because they heard it's a good Final Fantasy game. And I think both of those reasons are valid. I think it makes sense and is natural for 14 to try to accommodate more of those traditional FF fans. And they might find that they like some of the MMO aspects of the game after all, once they get their foot in the door. In the same way I found I like the Final Fantasy aspects. Still, even if the story manages to become... Wait, I found I like the Final Fantasy aspects.
Yeah. The Final Fantasy XIV aspects. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100% pure content.
Aspects. Still, even if the story manages to become fully soloable, Yoshi said that some people will still never ever play because of the sub fee and the online requirement. But since those things are not going away, at the very least, they can try to attract more people by just making it more accommodating to people who want to play alone through the story, those single player RPG fans. And I do get how making the game more soloable is appealing and necessary, because I worked in food service and in retail. I know what it's like to come home feeling like the last thing you want to deal with is somebody telling you to go faster or to do things their way. Like sometimes the guarantee of
I've done
zero
that. I've worked in
expectations
retail
from other
and food
people
service.
is the most comforting thought imaginable. Even if you know
You don't want to deal with people.
Is great and kind and welcoming, you don't even want a 1% chance of running into some bastard. So even in single player, you will meet Nero. Of course, some people will say
Can't
that,
avoid all the bastards.
well, then don't play an MMO. Go play something else. Devs shouldn't make soloing easier, because in an MMO, everyone should be forced into group content. But I personally think that social interactions are better when they're not forced, when it's something you actually want to do by choice. You're in the mood for doing it.
I mean, like, you're playing an MMO. And you don't want to be forced to play with other people. But you're playing an MMO. But you don't want to be forced to play with people. It is a circular argument. You can't get away from it. I'm sorry if you feel that you are forced to do content with other people. And of course, I think it's good to make it accommodating for people who want to do content solo. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I personally like the trust system. Like, I will use the trust system for jobs that I'm uncomfortable doing content with. But the goal of the trust system is so I can play a job, at least for me, this is how I use it. Like, I will use the trust system to play a job that I'm uncomfortable with, play it for a certain period of time with the AI, so that I can eventually feel comfortable enough to run it with real people. That's how I do my healing content. Like, that's how I learn how to heal. I basically used the AI and worked with that so that I could learn and get more comfortable with using the tools that are available to me with AI, who aren't gonna, be angry at me for sucking. But I also think that if you can just say, hey, I'm new to this job, I haven't healed, I'm new to the job, and or I haven't healed this content before, 9 times out of 10 people will be understanding about that. But this idea of like not being forced to do content is absolutely ridiculous, because, like, again, you're playing an MMO, you're going to have to play with other people. And even if you don't have to play with other people all the time, you will run into actual people in the game because you're playing an MMO. People who complain about not being able to do content solo don't play an MMO. However, I like the idea of having options. There's nothing wrong with having options, but if that's your main gripe, play a single player game.
And again, keeping in mind that the only thing they want to make more soloable is the story, I don't know who is out here thinking that story dungeons that you queue for with randoms in the duty finder is the height of the MMO social experience. Like, you do not see a hide or tail of most of these people ever again, and you'll probably only hear like hi at the start and GG at the end. Like, it is barely discernible from running the exact same thing with a squadron or with NPCs or trust, who might actually have more to say. And I'm not saying that fun cannot ever be had with randoms, but I just don't see duty finder as a core and mandatory part of the rich social tapestry of Final Fantasy XIV. I think some of this blowback against solo options to do story dungeons and story trials comes from a fear that it will somehow come at the expense of the social experience. But I really do not think that that is the case. I think it's going to get new people to play who would have never even considered it before. People who would have never touched the game before because they saw, oh, that's multiplayer, it's MMO, I have to deal with other people. I will not. Like, there's some people that are like that. It's almost like when Burger King introduced the Impossible Whopper, and the CEO said that they were not seeing their usual guests swap out their normal Whopper for the Impossible Whopper. But what they were seeing was new guests coming in that never ate at Burger King before. It was attracting new people who would have never even considered eating there without the new option. It's just so, I feel like it's similar in this way that it's not excluding, it's not changing what people are already wanting to do. It's just a new way to go about it. It's
providing an
widening
option.
the door. It's broadening.
It's providing an
the
alternative
appeal.
for people
It's
who
throwing
are
wide the
socially
gates.
uncomfortable.
Most of the story leveling experience on your first playthrough is already solo. You're watching cutscenes, you're doing quests, like that is all you. And
True.
so it's already mostly like that for your first playthrough. The only thing they want to make soloable is that occasional group dungeon or trial that pops up in the MSQ. But there is and always will be stuff in the game that only groups can do, like the current raids, like PvP,
like maps,
and anything that you do
like
with a group will be faster and more efficient with a group of real players, unless one of those players is me. We've already begun to see the soloization of Policy 14 begin. With patch 6.1, we got duty support, aka trust, added to.
Oh yeah, it's called duty support. That's the thing that they added in 14 for the lower
all of
levels.
that content fully soloable. So if
you can
use
even do
the system,
trials
the game
solo.
will provide you with some AI bots to go with you through the story dungeons. And Yoshimi did say that throughout the time frame of 6.1 to 6.5, the team will gradually be adding trust compatibility to all main dungeons and 4-player trials, and 8-player trials from the main story quest will get support as well, but this will likely either happen in 7.0 or in that next expansion's patches, which is pretty huge. Like, you will not have to deal with other people if you are not in the mood for it. Like, it's going to let you practice your job and in a totally stress-free environment, which is one of the big draws for trust as it stands even now. I do think a fun thing they could add to duty support would be a way to customize the look of the AI that go in there with you, or better yet, let you bring your retainers in there with you, since you've already customized how they look and they're already working for you, so it makes sense.
That'd be cool.
And I'm not just saying that as a way to guarantee I can always have 3 bunny boys in my party every time my dungeon runs. Of course, even with duty support, the game still incentivizes you to cooperate with other players to do the dungeons because, like I said before, it is always faster to do the dungeons with real players who will do more damage, which is great because it is an MMO after all, and it's a way to keep the duty finder populated. So the AI bots won't turk our gerbs. That's sad.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think to have the option to use the AI is good. I think it's a great way to get people, like Zeppelin said, to get people into the game who may be socially awkward or just have social anxiety. I think it's a great way for people who still are not very comfortable playing FF14 to have a way of getting comfortable playing their job, playing the game, experiencing the game through the story. And thank goodness they're only talking about soloing the game for the MSQ. Thank goodness. So I think it's a good thing. I do think it's a good thing for new players to have a means of not feeling as though they have to prove something as soon as they go into every dungeon. However, I think people, as they spend more time in Final Fantasy XIV, they first of all realize that there's so many other ways to socialize with people, and secondly, what Zeppelin just said, they're like running dungeons with real people is so much better, so much faster, and more efficient. And all you really have to do is say, "Hey, I'm new. Please take it easy." And most people would be very understanding of that. But so many people think, I get it. I really do get the idea of being having social anxiety, because I did not feel comfortable when I first started playing FF14. There was a period of time where I did not feel comfortable going into dungeons with other people. Did not. Didn't feel comfortable. Was very, very nervous because I felt like I had something to prove all the time. However, once I finally jumped into it and gave myself a chance to just do it, and this is obviously this is way before the trust system. This is way before we had anything like we had in Shadowbringers, and let alone an Endwalker. But once I finally kind of jumped in and got comfortable, because I didn't really have much of a choice anyway in the matter, I felt like, oh well, I can actually do this. And nowadays, they release new dungeons, and yeah, it may be a new dungeon, but I go up in there as a tank, front and center, and I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this thing. And 9 times out of 10, it goes pretty well. So I think I'm glad that people will now have the option to, kind of overcome that barrier a lot more easily by having AI to run with. But I think once people realize that having real people is just way better when you're actually like, grinding for tomestones and you actually start to care about gearing up your character and all that, you're going to want to run with real people because, you know, regardless of people being assholes here and there, it's all in all way faster than just using the trust systems and such.
But a trust dungeon can take between 22 and 35 minutes depending on your role, on your skill with your job, on your gear, and importantly, figuring out how much the AI can actually handle. One thing that a lot of people don't know about trust, and that I learned recently, is that
they can only do
each
so
dungeon
much.
is sort of like a puzzle in a sense, trying to figure out how much the trust can handle before they get overwhelmed, like how big you can make the pulls, for example. As for the story dungeons that are not currently accessible through duty support or trust and do require a party, they are meant to be fairly easy and forgiving of mistakes. So if you happen to reach a dungeon that doesn't have duty support, don't be afraid to just go in there with randoms or with friends.
Yeah, just go in.
Though one good thing about randomly matched parties is that other people will not know that you make the exact same mistake every single time. This is my first time here. I had no idea. There's plenty of other solo content that you can occupy yourself with in the game right now, like doing side quests, doing beast tribe quests, crafting and gathering, fate soloing, like I like to do on warrior, which is pretty easy to farm up bicolor gemstones, which you can use to spend on all kinds of prizes like mounts, minions, and stuff.
Music.
Gold saucer mini games.
Always
there's
music.
Sightseeing log. There's housing decorating if you're lucky enough to get a house. All of that solo. Soloing old dungeons and trials. And raids for glamour, minions, orchestrals, mounts. Like, I am pretty sure that all of Realm Reborn and Heaven's Word are soloable at max level. Stormblood, though, I think some of the extreme trials are possible to do solo, but if you're going for the mounts in Stormblood or beyond, it's going to be much, much easier and faster to farm that out in an unsynced party finder group. So honestly, those are some of the chillest groups of people that you can find in the game, and it's a pretty good way to meet people and make some friends, actually, so you won't need any of this advice anymore. You can bond lusting over Lakshmi's bosom or Snake Daddy's. Rathalos is soloable, by the way. It's pretty tough, but on a job with high burst, like Machinist or even Warrior, it's absolutely can be done, so that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And they will be adding Island Sanctuary soon, which you will be able to enjoy solo. Rumor has it that it is inspired by Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley. We don't know a ton about it yet, but in the Endwalker Media Tour, Yoshipi said that it would involve having your minions running around, like doing some gardening, maybe even placing some buildings here and there, so it could have a housing element. I would stay tuned to this channel because rest assured, I will be sharing more information about it as soon as
made
we
available.
know.
We've literally heard nothing about this since it was
Will
announced.
we be breeding on this island? Breeding our pets. I mean, let's clarify.
Yeah, we're not going to have a...
Breeding is already happening in Limsa. Of course, you can also go for the crowning solo achievement, the one that towers over all others. I'm talking, of course, about Necromancer. That is the title from clearing Palace of the Dead solo, and that is extremely difficult to do and will absolutely identify you as a GIGACHAD. Yes, there is also Lonely Hero, the
I'll have
title
to do that
for
one
doing
day.
the same thing in Heaven
I
and
haven't done
High,
Palace
but
of the
it
Dead
just
in
doesn't quite
years.
pack the same. Like, it is impressive, don't get me wrong. But Lonely Hero, I think, is less of a status symbol than Necromancer, because for Necromancer, it is 200 floors that you have to do by yourself with extremely little room for any mistakes. Necromancer is one of the most difficult achievements in the entire game. Like, it is right up there with an ultimate raid clear. And I know other people that have cleared ultimate and had managed to get Necromancer, and they said that it was harder to get Necromancer than to clear some of the ultimate fights that are in the game. And I think you can make an argument for that.
Interesting.
And that in some ways it is harder than an ultimate, because there is no one there with you to call out danger. There is no one to follow. There are no markers. There is no reliable path. There is no one to toss you a heal or a res, or to say, well, better luck next time, because when you die, it's game over. That's it. You start back all the way from level 1.
Yep.
And you've got nobody to blame but yourself. So with something like that, you'll either get hooked on the challenge and do it, or you'll be like, maybe
one day I'll do it.
maybe group
I don't know if I'm
content
that
isn't all
crazy,
that
but
bad.
maybe one day I'll
On this
try.
channel, I am often trying to give shy people a little push, right? Like, I'm always telling people, you know, at least try to dip your toes into group content. Maybe check out an FC, maybe join a static, to step out of your comfort zone just a little bit and try to meet some people. Because for me, my best memories in MMOs have always been times where there
With
were
people.
other people around.
With
There's people celebrating a
100%.
big boss kill, or just visiting a friend's in-game house, or having birthday parties in Costa del Sol during the Moonfire Fair Festival. Like, I know from my experience how much other players enrich the game, but other people who don't have that experience, they they don't know. And you don't want the idea that it's mandatory to put some people off from even getting in the door, right?
Okay, once again, I will say you're playing an MMO. Like, if people are gonna think that it's mandatory, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's mandatory. And you know, I understand what Zebla's trying to do. She's trying to basically make it clear that there are other ways to enjoy the game, and that the majority of your experiences in an MMO, in which you're interacting with other people, is by interacting with other people. Like, that is where the game normally shines. That's where you have an opportunity to make new friends and have really great experiences in the game. So it's not bad that you have to play the game with other people or do content with other people. But this idea, like, anyone who has it in their head that, you know, I don't want to play an MMO because I feel obligated to play with people, don't play an MMO. But I understand Yoshi P wants to bring as many people into the game as possible. They want the game to last a long time. There's going to be a lot of content. Like, I can understand Yoshi P wanting to make the game future proof, like adding in trust and the duty not duty finder, but the duty system, whatever it's called. Adding that in is 100% going to future-proof Final Fantasy XIV. It's going to make it possible to get through the main story, which is required for a lot of people who are getting to the game late. And the game will forever be capable of doing the content, eventually, largely by yourself, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's great, and that definitely future-proofs the game. But as and also, you know, advertises the game as you can enjoy the story of a Final Fantasy story largely by yourself, which I think is also good. I think a lot of people want that. But if you're expecting the entire experience of FF14 to be a solo experience, and that's what you want, and you can't stand being around other people, or you can't handle having social interactions with people, then you probably shouldn't mess around with the MMO genre. So I would certainly hope that maybe through time people will kind of grow out of that fear of interacting with other people. But the people who are just have that idea stuck in their mind, they probably just should stick with single player games. It's probably just not going to be for them, no matter what future proofing, no matter what, you know, opportunities that players will have to basically enjoy the game solo, because you enjoy the story solo, and then everything else has to be done with other people. And if you can't handle that, then the game's just not going to be fun for you in the long run, I would say.
They think that, oh, well, it's an MMO, so by nature, it's going to have a ton of social pressure and obligation. But
yeah,
14 really isn't
as it
that.
should.
And I think these are stereotypes that the genre needs to evolve beyond. And I think having these solo options for the story, I think in the story experience, it is appropriate just for that.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate also.
I think that's a way to do that and sort of evolve and grow to accommodate more people. Like, already Final Fantasy XIV is a game that you can take at your own pace with minimal pressure from other people. And, you know, not to be grim or anything, but I do think that making this game fully soloable will preserve its story to be accessible easily many years from now.
Hey, I
Some
was
other
saying
piece of advice
that.
I could share for
Go
players who
figure.
are still extremely hesitant
We're on
about
the same
touching
page.
multiplayer content at all, and you really only want to do this solo through the story, is maybe wait until around 6.4 to 6.5 when most of the main story quests should be soloable by then, or you can wait till 7.0 is on the horizon, and then you can try to get caught up just in time for the new expansion, or wait until just after the new expansion's release. I also, again, want to emphasize, I've said it a few times, but it bears repeating. I had to make this very, very clear, is that it's just the main story quest content that they want to make soloable, that will be soloable. And all the other content, all the other stuff, all the side content will all remain part of the MMO experience. So all the stuff that you end up actually doing with a group at max level when you're done with the story, that's what you end up spending the majority of your time on when you're finished with the story. All that's going to remain the way it is now. They're definitely not going to add AI bots to help you through extreme trials or ultimate raids. Do not worry, that is never happening. Do you know anyone that is hesitant to try Final Fantasy XIV at all because of the fact that it's a multiplayer game? Or like, have you been one of those people and then you gave it a try and then you found out that maybe the multiplayer element was fun or not as bad as you expected, or maybe you had a bad experience? I don't know. I actually would really like to hear from you and your experiences in the comment section down below. Let me know how you feel about them making the main story quest fully soloable. I personally am very positive about that. I would like as many people as possible to experience this game's story. I really do.
100%.
But again, just let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon or on Twitch. Yeah, I wanted to also say this is my last video here in this apartment where I have been temporarily in Portugal. We can say goodbye to fire extinguisher and we're gonna move on to France. I'll be in France for 3 months while I sort out documents and I guess go to US. So trying to figure out where to go from here after my life was turned completely upside down by the war in Ukraine. But yeah, it's wild. This weekend I'm going to be getting on the road, so I don't know how much extra editing I'm going to be able to do for this video, but I wanted to at least get it finished before I start packing up and everything. So I don't need to go on a whole tangent about this. I just want to give you a little information about I
appreciate the little update. I appreciate that.
Fire extinguisher. You can also support the channel for free just by clicking the subscribe button or by sharing this video with your fellow Warriors of Light, or maybe people who want to play the game but they're a little hesitant. I sure hope that they will give it a try. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Alright, so thank you, Zeppelin, for that video. It sounds like Zeppelin and I are on the same page. I think we are basically saying the same things. And I really enjoyed the video. I think it's great to let people know of the possibilities that are offered to you in FF14. You don't have to play the game. You don't have to go through the long, lengthy story for the most part with other people. You can now do that basically solo. And there's a ton of other things in the game that you can have access to. A ton of other ways to be social. A ton of other ways to experience the MMO for it being an MMO. But I would agree. Don't let the idea of, other aspects of the game or just being around people, most people are not going to be assholes to you. Like, that's just the fact of the matter. Like, most people in FF14 are not going to be jerks. You may have an unpleasant experience. You may. I've had a couple of unpleasant experiences. Like, I've actually had a moment. I was farming the dungeon Amarat in FF14. And I was trying to just get my clear so that I could get the Moogle tomes, because it was a Moogle tome event, and I was just farming Amarat for those tomes. And I ended up randomly with a group, and for whatever reason, one of the people in the group did not like how I was playing, and basically they got really upset because I wasn't they were like, you should do it this way, and I'm like, I've farmed this dungeon. I've played this dungeon a million times. It's not a big deal. It'll be fine. And they fucking threw a tantrum and basically delayed the entire dungeon. So the funny thing is, while the three of us who were left in the party, it was so ridiculous. But they got so pissed off at me for not I was answering back to them, but for whatever reason they were just not satisfied and they left the party. So we were stranded in Amarat for 15 minutes. We did manage to finish it, but it was absolutely garbage. So that's not the norm. Sometimes you'll run into people like that, but that's not the norm. And I'm glad that Zeppelin made this video so that at least people who are new, who are unaware of the opportunity to play FF14 story solo, now know that we're getting there. We're getting to that point where you can do that, and it's definitely going to help future-proof the game. It's going to make it a lot simpler for people who just want to experience a Final Fantasy story, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they will also want to experience the other aspects of the MMO as they get more comfortable with their job, as they meet new people and make new friends, maybe join an FC, and hopefully, have a more enriching experience with a lot of people. And then they'll forget that they even had that fear of being around other people in the first place, and they'll just be enjoying the game for what it is. And that's really my hope. I sincerely have hope for that, and I think Zeppla does too. So yeah, great video by Zeppla. So